would love to be a stay-at-home mom. I would love to be a homemaker and a wife. I would love to be able to live on a homestead and go milk my cow and take the eggs out of the chicken coop and have...
Then go do it, retard. One of the main things that we have failed our youth over, like one of the main failings, we have not taught people that farming is awful. Modern day farmers, in almost all cases, are people who own the land. Farmhands do the work. Farming is terrible. But if you want to go and get some like chunk of land out there in the sticks, you can. It's very inexpensive. You're wearing a tweed sport jacket. I mean, you say you have a job. You could probably afford to buy some land out there. Somewhere out there in Idaho or South Dakota, you could get a plot of land. It just sucks. You want to wake up every single day at 4:30 a.m. to tend to the cows or whatever, and then go to sleep again and then wake up again early. Your entire life is dictated by the crop cycle. You have no spare time for friends. You have to drive 35 minutes to the local grocery store to get overpriced groceries because the supply lines for getting stuff out there is incredibly difficult. You want all that?
I have one baby in the belly and on my hip and another toddler coming behind me. That's like my dream, but I can't.
That's my dream. I just want the world's most difficult job while also taking care of children. I'm definitely not romanticizing a like TikTok homesteading trad girl farm life aesthetic that is not real. You know, you keep seeing these influencers who are like, we went out into the countryside and bought 40 acres and we've been having an amazing time. Here's some video shots of our family looking happy. No, our children aren't smiling, but trust me, they're happy on the inside. Look at how white we are. Look at how traditional we are. And then like every single time this happens, the family was rich, because it takes a lot of money to have this lifestyle be like a pastoral dream. In reality, if you don't already have the money, you need to farm to farm. You need to farm in order to be a farmer. Vaush, the cheapest I've seen farmland in the past 5 years be is 10K an acre. It's not exactly cheap. 10K an acre, not exactly cheap. This guy ain't West Coast pilled. 10K an acre. They're handing out square feet for 10K over here in Seattle, okay?
Fucking do that, because the way the economy is set up is I'm forced to work. I'm forced to get an education.
This is how all of human history has been. Yeah, I saw a tweet where they said she doesn't want to be a farmer, she wants to be an aristocrat. And that's so true. You want to be an aristocrat. Like, you want to have a farm to tend to the same way a noblewoman has like a garden to tend to. You don't want to be a farmer. You want to be an aristocrat. I don't want to work. I don't want to be forced to do work. I want to be a farmer. Okay.
A higher education, a college degree, in order to make enough money that I can be financially independent and afford my own home or my own rent or my own gas or my own groceries, my own insurance. And it's
yes, you have to work to live. That is true. That is true. That is, you have to work to make money. That is how the system works. Yes.
Extremely difficult to do that, and it's very isolating as a woman when you have to do all of that all on your own, and you can't find somebody that you can outsource some of those chores and financial responsibilities like you would with a spouse.
Then you get a spouse. Would that problem is solved? So you don't have the like convenience financially and socially of having a partner. That's why you find a partner. Again, it's like the modern woke economy is forcing me to work, a thing women have never had to do. And unless you find a spouse, you can't even do any of these delightful trad girl things. Okay, then find the spouse. What are you complaining about? I think this just comes down to she doesn't know what she's talking about. I mean, it's the same problem that we have with Nazism. And this is kind of like the same pipeline, but for girls, where you have people who are correctly feeling alienated and unhappy with the current system, but rather than correctly identifying what the problems with it are and then working on social solutions, they're like, but what if I return with a V to this imagined idyllic fantasy version of the past where all of my problems are solved, you know? Which is fitting, because if you took a look at the video before I full screened it, it's sourced from Owen Benjamin, who is a Nazi, one of those Hitler was right types. So yeah, it's the same pipeline, just in the other direction.
So no, being a single working woman absolutely sucks.
Yeah. So I mean, like, so does being a single working man. So does working. Like, well, yeah, welcome to the world. Sorry, I'm not saying that it's bad, like, to complain about these things. It's good to fix them. But the idea of, like, I wish I could, like, again, listen to the beginning of this.
Would love to be able to live on a homestead and go milk my cow and take the eggs out of the chicken coop and have one baby in the belly and on my hip. And
you don't want this. You are literally, like, disturbingly susceptible to propaganda. You have watched TikToks that have convinced you that, like, you take a look at a supermodel who wears high heels out to the chicken coop, and you're like, oh, that would be so nice. That would be so calming. I'm not even getting into all the feminism bit. Like, if you're completely financially dependent on your husband, he could just rape and abuse you 24/7 and there's nothing you could do about it ever. Like, I'm not even gonna, like, leaving aside that, I mean, just the practicalities of the matter. You don't want any of that.
Another toddler coming behind me. That's like being a single working woman absolutely sucks. It's the worst thing ever. I hate it.
Actually, I think that being a slave or a Jew during the Holocaust would be worse than being a single working mother. But, you know, you do you.
I would go back to the 1950s in a second just so I wouldn't have to deal with this shit.
So again, I would go back to the 1950s. I would love to homestead, go to the chicken coop, have a kid on my hip and a kid in my belly. That's not the 50s. You were talking about subsistence farming, village pastoralism. Now you're just talking about a completely different point in time. Most women worked back in the 1950s, and the women who didn't were, like, hopped up on lithium and Prozac and shit, you know? Not Prozac, but you know what I mean. Massive psychiatric issues because a lot of them were basically just domestic slaves who had no choice but to obey their husbands. It's completely made up. It's like cowboys. Cowboys were never really real. Well, everything today we associate with cowboys is derived from, like, Italian cinema back in the 40s and 50s. It wasn't a real thing. The closest thing we had to real cowboys was you literally had, like, people moving herds of cattle from one parcel of land to another, and they were made obsolete by barbed wire because you could get, like, band of cattle to move along long routes by just keeping them in with barbed wire. They were the cowboys were just like truck drivers of their era. But we have a bunch of, like, associated ideas around cowboys because they were cool and we made movies about them. But they weren't real. And likewise, the 1950s, like, perfect house, just because you saw it in, like, an advertising blurb for a board game made in 52 or from a Norman Rockwell painting doesn't mean that era actually existed the way that you think it existed. It's like watching a shitty porn video and being like, man, I wish I actually got stuck in a washing machine. This woman being horny looking at Pornhub and she's like, man, I wish I was a stepmom. You need to unclog the filth of your mind, okay? Your concerns with modernity are valid, but, like, the trad route, this doesn't work. Lauren Southern did this. Remember Lauren Southern? The trad Nazi chick who had a whole career on telling women to act not like her. And then she was like, okay, I'll put my money where my mouth is. I'll stop making content and I'll go be a trad wife. And then, what a shocker. The kind of guy who goes after trad wives was an abusive, like, piece of shit and treated her terribly and made her into a wreck, and then their relationship collapsed. Oh, wow, maybe feminism was actually a good idea. She was miserable.
You're talking about a traditional nuclear family where the woman doesn't work.
I have no idea where you came from. You look like you are 5 years old. What is this? Swing state debates? I don't know what format this is. I don't know what this is.
In a married household with kids.
And statistically, that was the case.
You're a single woman who isn't married with kids yet. Like,
yeah. So I'm for it because of the way it is.
They get married. Like, what? If you don't care about feminism, then you don't really have a right to complain about what husband you get. Just get married. Like, if you want a husband to take care of you, get married. What, like if anything, you look like you're getting kind of old in terms of getting married at, like, the set demographic point that you would expect for the time period that you're romanticizing. Women used to get married like pregnant, married, whatever the like 18 or younger sometime. I mean, it varies obviously, but, like, you went to college? You're way ahead of the curve, okay? You need to, like, hit your head with a rock a few times, drop the college education out of your brain, and then go find any husband.
Most women were married by the age of 21 up until the 1970s.
I think it's a woman's choice. Before that, it was societally encouraged to marry young.
Yeah, and
Not just societally encouraged. It was basically like mandatory. Women couldn't get work in a lot of fields, and when they did get work, they weren't paid as much, so they basically had no way to afford life on their own. For a lot of women, they basically had no choice but to marry. But there are a lot of women back in those days who would just like never get a husband and would live with other unmarried women. And a lot of them were lesbians. A lot of them were literally just like, they had no other choice. Like, you were considered old by the time you were like 23 or 24 in a lot of cases. That's crazy. Like, oh, you missed the boat. Sorry. You aren't going to find a husband, and therefore you are never going to have a reliable income. You will never have a home. What the man?
It was better for women mental health-wise long-term to be able to go into that long-term committed relationship and have the established family.
Me, when I have no idea what I'm talking about and have no sources and are purely basing this off of the vibes of TikToks that I've seen, it was actually very psychiatrically beneficial to women back in the 1950s to be forced into marriage at a young age with like the first man who gave them a kiss at high school prom, you know?
Instead of being forced to slave away for a corporation that doesn't like you, doesn't care about you, makes you sit under fluorescent lights for 8, 9, 10 hours a day.
But if you don't like slaving away for a corporation who doesn't care about you, just you wait until you're slaving away in the home of a husband who doesn't care about you. You listen, okay? At least the corporation pays you, and generally speaking, they won't rape you. You know, results may vary, but generally speaking. Now, a husband who doesn't care about you, at least then you're doing it under warm, like, you know, low Kelvin lighting rather than fluorescent lighting.
You get a lunch break, you get health insurance, but do you have somebody who loves you staring at you every day like your child? No.
You can get that while working a job. It's just such a vibes-based argument, man. She just sounds incredibly lonely. I mean, this is literally like the female incel. This is like analogous in every point, like in every single point. It is one-to-one. Though the joke being that incels hate women like this because they would be saying basically what I'm saying here, which is, well, then why don't you find a husband? They would dislike the comparison because they would be like, oh, we're involuntarily celibate. She's voluntarily celibate. She's choosing. She's complaining about not having a husband while choosing not to marry any one of the numerous bachelors she knows in her day-to-day life.
No, it's horrible.
That's great. Every time one of these dumb bitches gets like a camera to sit down in front of, they go viral because 100 million guys are like, see, women don't like feminism. Take a look at the comments. My dad was a farmer. I grew up on a farm. I'm sorry, but most of you have no idea how hard farm work is. Cosplaying a farmer is cute, but it's not reality. My dad wanted better for my bro and me to get us off the farm for the next generation. Farming sucked so much that in the 1880s, Americans looked at mills in the north and like textile factories where children would be ground into paste in the gears trying to unclog the mill, and they'd be like, that's better. They would look at coal mines. They would look at factories where there was a fire every 3 hours. They'd be like, yeah, absolutely, yes, please. They looked at tenement houses where people died of cholera every day and they had to fall asleep hanging on ropes that were like hitched to the walls. Absolutely, yes, please get me off this farm. Absolutely, please God, get me off this farm. Unfortunately, men leave. We need our own money. I mean, she could just get married and have kids. No one's stopping her, lol. None of these people actually lived in the 50s to study history. I'm glad the comments at least are being like sensible, you know. She seems to be blaming other people that she's not married. She can get married and have children if she wants. She just chooses to live single. There's nothing stopping her from doing any of that shit except being an annoying asshole. True. If you dislike working for a company because they don't appreciate you, wait until you find out what it's like taking care of a baby and toddler full time. She wants to blame everyone else for her life not being how she wants it. It's a self-defeating mindset. True! Okay. Nice. Uniformly correct comments. That's what I like to see. Looking at an Appalachian coal mine and going, yes. Yes, please. We're going to deal with this more and more as time goes on, where people feel like justified anxieties but aim them in the wrong direction, right? They have the wrong solutions to it. That's why I always say, like, a person thinking there's a problem, that's not enough. You need to agree on the solution. Agreeing on a problem means nothing. Nazis and leftists both think there's a problem with international banking, okay? Like, you can't, that doesn't tell you anything. That doesn't tell you anything. Agreeing on the problem is level 0. Yeah, it's literally like you haven't even begun to address the real issue then. Vermilion Starlight, I think that kind of invalidates how they feel. I don't think it's a kink or sexual kink or whatever the thing. I mean, not in a lot of cases. I think that they are legitimately frustrated with the unfair expectations placed on people, where it's like, yeah, you have to go to school for, 16 years in order to have the right to have a job that just barely allows you to afford a life and maybe eke out one kid barely, and not have the same quality of life that your parents enjoyed. I understand the like genuine anxiety around that. But then to respond to that and go like, oh, well, I wish I lived at a farm. Are you a idiot? What are you talking about? I hate how workers' rights have been eroded over the past century. I would like to get rid of feminism.